instructions.
Well, let's thank our panel for that. Now, Sherri is going to talk about practical tips for the classroom.
And I'm not good at sitting. So I've taught everything from K through high school science in my history. And I've been really excited by Reset's opportunity that they've given me to go out and work with all of you if you desire to come and look. In fact, I've seen a tsunami lesson. I've worked with George and at Barrett, and they've all been great experiences. So before I start with my creative idea, when I said to my 25-year-old daughter this afternoon, you know, I'm going to do Jay Leno's list of 10. And she goes, huh? Does everybody here know who Jay Leno was in his list of 10? Okay, just to make sure. So I was like, you don't know who Jay, whatever. It was just a little moment for me. But anyway, so I was asked to do, to come up with some tips that I've given many of you in this room, and some that I see repeatedly, and many of you do these things already, but maybe I can throw in a little caveat or something to help you. So number 10 is use students' name when possible. So I know that you come into a class and you, at the beginning, you don't know all the kids. But it's not difficult for a classroom teacher to have the kids slap on their name, write their name, and put it on a sticky note ahead of time. And it makes a real difference when I piece of yarn ahead of time. And after every reset lesson, they just take them up and they put them away, and the teacher brings them out again time. It helps. It makes a difference, I think. Number 9, pre-package your materials before the lesson. Ziploc bags are your friends. So back to the fact that time is short. It takes a while to hand out 25 light bulbs or 25 pairs of scissors or whatever it is. And if you can package up those materials in a Ziploc bag, you'd have to do 25, but you might have 5 groups. So you create a package of materials for 5 groups, and to have them just be able to hand them out like that saves you a lot of time. And as far as for me, it makes me feel more confident because I double check to know that everything that a student's going to need is in that Ziploc bag, and I didn't leave it sitting in my car, which I tend to do a lot. So, number 8, know your lesson objective. I'm not talking educational terminology here. I think it's really important, and I tell all of my students that before you come up with an activity or any kind of lesson, you really know, what is it that I'm trying to get across? Am I really just trying to get them to figure out how to light a light bulb and create a circuit? Or am I trying to get them to think about a pendulum and just focus on the length? It's not something that you have to write out, but just in your own head, I think it helps. What am I doing? What do I want them to know at the end of this 45-minute period? And it helps you as a teacher or you as an educator focus their learning. And that makes a huge difference, I think, in how you present and keeps you focused and usually has a higher success rate in what you're presenting. Number 7, model the steps before handing out the materials. Once you hand out the materials, you have lost them. Because you want them to be engaged in the materials. You want them to be excited. I always suggest to my teachers and to Reset volunteers that they model an activity, keeping in mind that you don't want to go too many steps ahead, but you want to get to, and depending on the age. Typically, I have teachers who will do several steps and go, okay, so does anybody have any questions? Asking if they have any questions is really a waste of their air. Students are not going to raise their hand and say, yes, I have a question on step number 3. I don't understand how you did X, Y, or Z. So it's important to think about your age group and how many steps you can model, and then you give them the materials. What I think it's very important at the beginning of any new topic or any new set of materials to give them 5 minutes of free exploration. Let them play with the materials if you have the time and the luxury of doing that. To get some of those, oh, I really want to try sticking that wire into here, whatever, as long as it's safe. As long as it's safe. It gives them the chance to sort of, if I call it, get out those wiggles, get out those questions that are in their heads, and then you can model, or then they can start doing the steps that you actually want them to do. Number 6, move around the room. Do not do what I am doing. Do not stand in one place while you're talking. Actually, let me just throw. Actually, I just thought of one really great technique when you model something. Model, and then tell each student to turn to the person to their left or to their right. Tell each other what I just said. Tell each other what the 3 steps is that we're going to do once I hand out the materials. It's a great technique. It improves communication. It encourages the kids to listen. And then you know ahead of time, if one of them doesn't know, hopefully the other one does. But it's just a really simple, quick technique to use. Tell your partner, what did Mrs. Kohr just say? What did the reset teacher just say? Whatever. Move around the room. Standing still puts everybody to sleep, including you. Number 5, give compliments. As Ms. Nunes was saying, there are hard classes out there. And many of the schools that you will be working in have some challenging students. Personally, every year I teach, I find more and more challenging students for lots and lots of reasons. However, if you compliment, Anne, I love it that you have your pencil ready to take notes. That is so great. And I say it really loudly so that everybody hears me. And Jennifer wants to copy and emulate what Anne is doing because, ooh, she noticed and she got a compliment. Again, it helps to know their names, and that is another positive part of the experience. And you're there to make them love science and to make science come alive. And the best way to do that is to compliment them and to tell them that when they're doing something great, that they are doing something great, because that's going to instill in them the love of, oh gosh, I'm good at this. This makes me feel good. I love science, and I want to do more of it. Number 4, ask why, how, if, and what else questions. How could we change the pendulum? What if I shorten the length of the pendulum? If the wind is blowing, is that going to affect my tsunami? If I change the materials of my house, is that going to affect how the tsunami affects the environment? These are just really good key educational question words to sort of throw out there and think about, and it gives kids the opportunity to they're open-ended, and it gives kids the opportunity to give back information as opposed to what did you observe. I think that's important, but I think to get them to use those creative juices, as we were talking about, and to be thinking and inventive, and to become to have ownership of the material that they're learning. These are the kinds of questions that will instill that. Number 3, everything takes longer than you planned. I think you should overplan. There's nothing more threatening, I guess, you guys can agree or disagree, my years of teaching, to run out of material before the bell rings. Oh shoot, what do I do now? I can give you lots of suggestions on how you can fill that time, but I think one of the hardest things is when you feel like in your head, I want to cover A, B, and C, and all of a sudden it's close to the time that you have to end, and you try to rush it in there or push it in there too fast. It's always better to have too much and to slow it down a little and take your to get feedback from the students that you're teaching. You can always throw it in next time. They'll get it next year. It's not the end of the world if you don't get to C. But if you do A and B really well and they walk out going, yes, I love that, it's a positive experience. So, and in teaching, everything takes longer than you think. Be creative. So one of the things that I can help, and I have just flashcards, whiteboards, props, sentence strips, I'll explain some of these, video clips that you might want to show, small group discussions, kind of like the partner share, something that we call lifelines, where if you ask a question and somebody doesn't know the answer, instead of calling on somebody else, say to the student, well, ask one of your classmates. You have a lifeline. Ask somebody else in the class who might be able to help you with the information. So again, it doesn't make them feel like they don't know or they're stupid, but it lets them take advantage of other kids in their classroom to help them. Popcorn, I think, is a great teaching tool. Let's say, for instance, that George was doing the pendulum and you were doing it in an older grade, not little kids. But you might give them a minute to, together in a group of 3 or 4, write down all the different variables that you think could affect the movement of the pendulum or the timing or whatever it is that you're measuring. Then the students the group of 3 or 4 has a list. I don't know, 3, 4, 5 things that together, no pressure, together they came up with this list. And then you yell popcorn, and somebody has to pop up and say, we thought the length. Popcorn, we thought that the mass of the thing hanging. Sorry. It's just a way to get everybody involved. The kids love, again, I can't sit still, they can't sit still. So it gets them up and down. It's a teaching tool. It's a technique. And one of the things that I am available to help you do, in addition to coming to your class and observing what you do and then giving you feedback, if you're having trouble and you don't have a great teaching partner like Brittany and Susan, who are amazing and give the Reset team a lot of help, and I wish that everybody had the time to do that, I'm a person that you can email. I can give you ideas. I can help you bring a lesson down to a certain level or up to a certain level. I know what kids K through 12 are capable of doing academically, and I can help guide you in that way. So you can take advantage of me that way as well. And then finally, I think what Reset does, which is unique, is real world application. You guys are all scientists. You know stuff that's really cool that I don't know, that I don't understand, and that your students don't understand. And all it takes is an anecdote. I'm an engineer, and I'm a flight engineer, and I get to decide how long the wings of airplanes have to be so that they can have enough lift, if that's what you're teaching about. I personally think that we as Reset volunteers, we're so enthusiastic about going to the classroom and getting the content in that we forget the great perspective that we're coming from and the experiences that you've had in your careers that can turn these kids on to science careers, math careers, that are stories that are real world stories that they never thought anybody went out there and studied tsunamis. They heard about a tsunami and it's destructive and it rips up houses, but they don't know that there are scientists out there that actually study this stuff. And so any real world applications, which I think is what you were mentioning, and I can't see that far to call your name. Is it Paul? Rick? Sorry, so you can't see.
Close
It's okay. What you were saying about the formula and getting kids to go, oh my gosh, that's why we have math. I put it on silent. My students at George Mason lose points for this. Sorry. I apologize. I really thought I put it on silent. Sorry. That's the daughter, by the way, who didn't know who Jane Leno was. So again, you have that opportunity to bring what you do. That's what makes you guys so unique. Take advantage of that. Use that. It's good to talk about yourself in that context. Let the science come alive for these kids. These hands-on experiments are so great, and that's going to excite them, but it's really good to give them some real-world context, I think, also, and that's what Reset volunteers have that's unique, and I would say take advantage of it, use it. So those are my top 10 tips.
Questions? Comments? Other things you find helpful in the classroom?
One comment was here. I don't remember which number it was, but it was when you talked about giving compliments. One thing, well, probably the best example I can think of is actually not my experience with Reset, but I volunteered at the Smithsonian in the Natural History Museum in the Ocean Hall. And we have a lot of actual specimens, including the big giant squid, are displayed in a liquid kind of compound. So a lot of kids will say something like, "Oh, is that water or something?" I say, "Well, it is clear and it is a liquid, but it's not water. It's actually synthetically we call Novec. Think of it like a liquid plastic."
Right.
You know, to try to piece together why they thought it was water. And not
you're
to
not
say,
telling them it's
and
wrong.
not telling them it's wrong
Right.
either. you
Right.
know.
Right, which is awesome. We don't want to tell, are kids wrong? Yes. Is it important to learn that being wrong is okay, making mistakes is fine? Yes, but we have a small amount of time with them, and I personally feel like it's just more important to get them excited about science. And there's lots of techniques to use, which I'm happy to help again, if that's something that you specifically need help with, on ways, and that's an excellent example. Well, it looks like water, and it's clear like water, so you're giving them all those characteristics without telling them, yeah, no, it's not water.
Right. And in that case, I mean, it's oftentimes just the only question. There's 8 other people with different questions. Some want to know where the dinosaurs are and everything else. I mean,
Right, and where the
the
bathrooms are.
interaction time is so tiny and so precious,
Right.
and it makes an impression. You know,
Exactly.
so.
And we never, as educators, we never know what has come out of our mouth that has made an impression, positive or negative. And we have to be really cognizant of that. And it's hard. It's hard sometimes. And we're going to mess up sometimes. But it's important to keep in our heads as one of our objectives. And John has my email, and I think it's sent out there. So anybody who wants to set up an observation or ask questions or help plan lessons, or and I hope that Susan and George will both tell you that I'm not too intimidating when I come in, and I really jump in there and help, and I love to play. So take advantage of me, use me. That's what I'm here for. Thanks.
Any other thoughts or suggestions or things you've learned in the classroom that you would like to share? I guess I would point out that we have a range of kinds of classroom situations our volunteers find themselves in is quite wide. And we have a couple represented here today. And one is the team approach, which the Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers from the Patent and Trade Office does. So when they go to, say, Brittany's classroom, there may be how many volunteers, James?
It depends. It depends on the day, but you have anywhere from like what, 4 or 5 to sometimes 10 or 12.
So yeah,
Which is necessary because they don't just teach one class at a time. We have 54 students at once. They do. We
Oh,
have
really?
all 4th grade at once.
Okay, so that's 3, 4.
3 4th grade classes. And our students are 67% English language learners, so from Hispanic descent, so it's awesome.
oh wow, that's great.
It's really great.
So if you have like an average of say 7 and that many students, so you might have one volunteer working with a small
Group.
Right. And we definitely
and
still
then,
use the
and then
whistle.
is there a lead volunteer up front that describes the experiment?
Mr.
Right.
So,
Always a leader.
I'm always open to allowing other people to lead, but I think 54, 3rd or 4th graders at one time was a little intimidating at first. So I tend to be the one who does it. James has done it before though. But yeah, I mean, you take the lead, and basically we try to get one volunteer for. The goal is every four students, but it tends to be like six or 7 students per every volunteer because it's hard, taking a break during the middle of the day to go to a school is, not everyone has the time or dedication to do it, which is why I love my team for doing it. But it's really good. So I'll get up there, I'll get the basic lesson plan of show them what we're going to be doing, kind of introduce the concepts that we're going to be going over. The volunteers ahead of time already know what we're doing, and so once we break into groups, they'll get their set of students, and then they'll just reinforce everything and work with them doing, whatever it is we're doing that particular day.
And then there's another team from the Patent and Trade Office that goes up to Whittier in Northeast DC.
Yes.
You're on that team?
Yeah, probably the senior member on the team. Yeah, we go over to Whittier Elementary. We work with third graders in the fall and fourth graders in the spring. And it is another team effort kind of thing. Like, in fact, all 4 of us here were all at the last session. But what happens is it seems to change a bit from year to year, but sometimes you just have 1 classroom, sometimes it's 2 classrooms worth of students. I guess it depends on the enrollment. But yeah, we'll have anywhere from 5 or 6 volunteers to 13, 12 anyway. The more the merrier, really, because you get the smaller groups and each student gets more involved each way. But yeah, we have a leader, that usually a spokesperson that leads off the discussion, gets things started before we break into groups, and pretty much the way Mr. Wan discussed it.
And then Miss Samantha here is with a team from primarily the Environmental Protection Agency, but also occasionally a NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration rep, participates out in Annapolis. So they send a team over there to work mostly on ecology and watershed kind of experiments. Then if you move to the kind of the model that Susan and George have, it's a single volunteer working with a class. And what's great about this that isn't typical of all type situations is that Susan is so interactive with the volunteer. And Susan, indeed, is a science enrichment coordinator for the school. And not all schools have that. So some of our volunteers, like Harold, like Jamie, like Ann is about to undertake, is you're working with a class of students. The teacher might not have that amount of engagement with you. In fact, sometimes just getting a teacher's time and attention to even respond to an email can be a challenge. So that's another model where you're a little bit more on your own.
But you don't have to be. That's what I'm here for.
Except for Sherri, you're on your own. But that's it's not that the teachers don't want to be engaged or don't want to spend time discussing and planning experiments with you. It's just that they're so incredibly busy, these teachers today. It's amazing. So that's that. So you have the whole spectrum of programs. So there's a lot of different experiences that the volunteers have.
It's also... I to point out what Susan, you said, teachers having just retired from my teaching career, they are unbelievably busy. I mean, compared to my corporate executive life, my teaching career, for 1/10 the pay, was a lot more intense. And, I mean, you have a 3-minute gap between classes. You might be able to go to the bathroom. You're dealing with the kid going out the door who has some issues, somebody else who's come in early. You're trying to respond to 15 emails in about 2 minutes. So, and then you've got all sorts of issues going on, planning lessons and coming up, issues with your principal or your department chair or whatever else is going on. So they really are stressed out in most of my life. And they really have incredibly intense work days. The public at large does not appreciate it. They do. Just trust me. They do.
Also, we have to remember that a lot of teachers, especially in the elementary schools, are not scientists, are not comfortable with science, and that they like having you there, but they don't feel qualified to help you, to be your collaborator, because they're learning right along with the students the science that you're presenting. And like we said, a lot of the schools do not have science coordinators. A lot of the schools, a lot of the teachers aren't comfortable with science, which I sort of am reluctant to say, but sometimes that's why they're teachers, is because they aren't comfortable with science, they're comfortable with the other parts, they're comfortable with teaching. And so we have to be willing to, draw them in, so to speak.
I think I'm a prime example of that. Just saying, I mean, I have my fair share of science, but you guys are on a whole another level. So it was very intimidating for us. He's like, we're going to come and do some science and engineering projects. I'm like, go for it, because I really have no idea. But, I mean, prime example, health and phys ed teacher, but our school advocates for science and math. So if you find a teacher willing, you're good to go.
Yeah.
And we love it.
And can I add, so Kohr Kelly's a Kohr school. So before I was just working with third graders, and then, I guess 2 years ago, you asked if we could do more classes, and I was like, more classes? I was like, is it one enough? But so we decided to do fourth grade as well, which I'm glad we did, because now that gives us an opportunity. Not only this is the first year that I've had, the same group of kids, so I had them as third graders. Last year we did, and they remembered us, and it was just made working with them even that much more powerful and impactful, because they had already had this experience, and they were really looking forward to it. And actually, it's going to culminate this coming Wednesday when we're bringing them to the USPTO for an Engineering Week program. It's going to be a sad day for me because it's the last time I work with them, but yeah, it's really cool. So.
All 54 of us. I have a question. So I volunteer at the Ross Elementary School, and I'm really enjoying it. But my question for reset is, why are you guys only restricted to elementary school? Why not middle school, high school?
I guess that's a question for me. One of the reasons is this is a niche that we identified where we thought if we hit the children young and got them excited about science, that would carry through. And another thing is, when you get to middle schools, we have one middle school program, but when you get to middle and high schools, there tends to be a stronger science program in these schools. And so we do focus, actually now focus on pre-kindergarten as well, because there's research that shows that pre-kindergartners should be exposed to some science before they enter kindergarten. But there are other programs that do work with more with middle schools and high schools as well. But often that's more of a mentoring relationship, one volunteer with one student. Since there is a science teacher who has the curriculum, has the capacity to do lab work that isn't available in elementary schools. Nearly all elementary schools. Parents make exception. Just one reference to Kohr School. Kohr School is a new concept we have where we try to hit the students at multiple grade levels with different science topics as they progress through their elementary school education. And part of that is we are trying to connect with the parents more a bit, so if they know that their students are doing hands-on science, they might encourage them in that regard. That's why we tell volunteers if you can have them take home a relatively inexpensive science kit or something scientific that they can work on with their siblings and their parents. That's a good thing as well. And we're glad that Vera has introduced us or invited us to come to their science night. And I might dress up like an astronaut.
We have suits.
Let's give a round of applause to everybody here. I'm going to ask, we do have several handouts in addition to the one that Susan gave you. There is our annual report, which just came back with the printer for calendar year 2014. Also, on the back of the program, there's an evaluation form.